Today, we at Known Pleasures are going to address the storm in a T-shirt that surrounded the Australian Prime Minister's decision to don Joy Division attire and descend from an airplane, thus causing certain leaders of men to lose control. Now, I personally thought this was a pretty cool thing. Now, was Macron strolling around Paris wearing a plastic Bertrand T-shirt? Would Keir Starmer wear an XTC T-shirt whilst visiting the Towers of London? Would Gavin Newsom wear a Dead Kennedys cap and scream California Uber alles? No, this was a watershed moment.
Yeah, keep going, Graham.
I'm not quite sure what a watershed is, but anyway, but I just thought this was a big moment because regardless of what you think of his politics, it was a pretty cool thing to have a Prime Minister flying the flag for post-punk, which we obviously love. So, Patrick, maybe we should explain to our listeners who Albo is.
What on earth are we even talking about? I think is probably a fair question.
Well, people in Australia know.
Yeah, that's right. But for our overseas listeners, I think it'd be great if we just talk for about 10 minutes among ourselves to the utter bafflement of anyone listening who isn't Australian.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, when was it, like the 23rd or whatever of October 2025, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stepped off a plane from Washington after a successful meeting with Donald Trump. And you can tell it was a successful meeting because no one outside of Australia will have heard anything about it. If it had been an unsuccessful meeting, it would have been all over the world's press. It would have been another one of those Trump kind of classic spectacles.
Yes.
But as it was, he stepped off the plane wearing not a suit, as would be traditional, but a Joy Division T-shirt, an Unknown Pleasures T-shirt. And it caused a little bit of a controversy.
But moving along, and the T-shirt Albo wore as he stepped off the plane from DC has come back to bite him. Let's have a look at it.
The Prime Minister stepped off the plane proudly wearing a T-shirt.
Now, I am a great rock and roll fan, as viewers know. I immediately almost threw up.
In terms of why an Australian Prime Minister was even wearing a Joy Division T-shirt, Anthony Albanese, a Labor Party Prime Minister since 2022. He does love his music. Over the years, he's occasionally performed as a DJ under the name DJ Albo. He's been known to play a wide kind of range of music from, you might hear a bit of the Jam or New Order or Ramones or Radio Birdman or more modern stuff like Tame Impala, for instance. And he also is he doesn't mind throwing in the occasional musical reference at media conferences. When he embarked on his election campaign in 2022, he announced, "Hey ho, let's go."
In the words of the great Ramones, hey ho, let's go.
A Ramones reference. And when he won the election, he announced the members of his first ministry, and he quoted Billy Bragg at that particular event, which said, "Just because you're going forwards doesn't mean I'm going backwards." So that's his kind of musical bona fides. Yeah, he's been Prime Minister since 2022, and as a Labor Prime Minister, he's not greatly liked by the right side of politics. So, yeah, he stepped off a plane wearing a Joy Division T-shirt. Where could be the harm in that, Graham?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wear a T-shirt like that all the time, and no one bats an eyelid. But what was her name? Susan Ley?
Susan Lee, I think it's pronounced as.
Susan Lee.
Who is the leader of the opposition, the Conservative coalition of the Liberal Party and the National Party.
She was the one that kicked off this whole furore, saying that that particular band that we know and love, Joy Division, the history of their name had sort of anti-Semitic undertones.
Arriving back in Australia from his overseas trip, the Prime Minister stepped off the plane proudly wearing a T-shirt with the name of a band, Joy Division, whose origins are steeped in anti-Semitism. The name was taken from the wing of a Nazi concentration camp where Jewish women were forced into sexual slavery.
I think Suzanne Lee was meant to be an ally. Like, she was also a fan of post-punk and new wave music, I think. She is of similar age to myself and Albo. I did like the way it kind of came across with Suzanne Lee, like she didn't know where this name came from, like the history of the name Joy Division. Because everyone kind of knew. It was in 24-Hour Party People, they spoke about it. It was in Control, the 2007 movie about Ian Curtis.
These are fairly obscure references in the broader sort of cultural context. You would actually need to pay more than lip service to being a post-punk. I'm not saying that she doesn't have every XTC album in her collection. She quite possibly does.
I think she does.
She's done all sorts of things, including being a punk back in the day.
What upsets me about it is that the people who didn't know Joy Division, like moving forward, people are going to think that they were this anti-Semitic band or these Nazi sympathizers. And it just wasn't true.
They didn't do themselves any favors, Joy Division, with some of their stylistic choices, including having a member of Nazi youth on the cover of their first EP, which they changed for subsequent reissues, I think. Mm-hmm. Barney and Hookie from the band have said that, they might make a different decision nowadays about the band name, but they were trying to be shocking, they were trying to be provocative, which was what everyone was trying to do in those days.
Well, we should talk about that, because I wanted to mention that the punks had long employed Nazi and fascist imagery anyway. Not only Joy Division, there was another band called the London SS. The Sex Pistols had a song called Belsen Was a Gas. Adam and the Ants sang about a concentration camp in Deutsche Girls. Sid Vicious once walked through the Jewish quarter of Paris wearing a swastika. And, of course, famously, Susie from Susie and the Banshees used to wear a swastika armband. The desired effect at the time was to piss off the older generation.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
think any of these people were Nazi sympathizers at all. They just wanted to get up people's noses. And I think people need to understand that when discussing, where Joy Division got the name from. I mean, if your modus operandi is to upset the older generation, then hearing a name like Joy Division, which is, by the way, is a great name, the fact that there were Nazi connotations to it, that they would have loved that at the time. But there was something called the National Front that happened in the late 70s. And a lot of the punks and punk bands kind of mobilized under the Rock Against Racism banner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and they used to play gigs against racism. So it was, but I think people need to understand this before judging Joy Division and the punk movement in general.
That was a generation of kids who were surrounded by the Second World War. As Peter Hook said, they'd grown up with bomb craters behind their houses. I mean, they were fascinated by the Second World War. So they were reading about it and they were talking about it, and it was a backdrop to their lives in a way that's kind of hard to picture 40, 45, 50 years later.
Yeah.
So from a political point of view, it's quite odd that it took Susan Lee 4 or 5 days after Albanese stepped off the plane with his Joy Division T-shirt on before she even mentioned it, and suddenly she was outraged by it. And Albo has been out and about wearing that T-shirt
for a while.
Before anyway.
Yeah.
He's been seen publicly in that T-shirt. So it was quite opportunistic.
That's what I think. It's very cynical political ploy, I think, for them to jump on this, because they thought, have you heard about where the name Joy Division comes from? And our Prime Minister's wearing it?
And last year, Susan posted a photograph of her with her first ever car. And what kind of car was it, Graham?
It was a Volkswagen.
It was a Volkswagen. It was like...
Shame.
It's absolutely perfect as imagery. I mean, you couldn't make up this story really from beginning to end, but that is such a perfect detail.
Yeah.
The right-wing press, basically the Rupert Murdoch Brigade, which is the Australian newspaper, I think, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch and Sky News, they've been loving this story because it enables them to stick the boot into the Australian Prime Minister after he had quite a successful meeting with Trump. So, that was one less weapon they had. So they were very keen to keep the story alive. And there's a story online from Shari Markson on Sky News, and she announced with great solemnity It's now night 3 of T-shirt Gate.
It's now night 3 of T-shirt Gate.
And it's just, again, it's like, yeah, T-shirt Gate, sure, Shari. In that little spiel, she says that even ardent Joy Division fans tell me they'd never buy or wear the T-shirt.
Oh, you're
And it's
kidding.
like, yeah, because you never see that T-shirt around or any of that.
No one wears it.
Unknown players. Yeah, when I saw Albo wearing that T-shirt, a couple of weeks ago, I thought, yeah, whatever happened to that album and the artwork? It's like, it's such a good image. Why don't people use it?
I know. It was just a one-off. No one ever heard from it ever again.
Another kind of favourite detail of mine from the story was that Susan said that there was not even plausible deniability in terms of not knowing about where the band name came from.
Mm-hmm.
When Albo was interviewed on the excellent podcast by Nigel Marsh called 5 of My Life, in which notable people talk about their favourite song, favourite book, that kind of thing. Albo chose Love Will Tear Us Apart. And when he was talking about the song, Nigel, the host, did mention the backstory. So Susan was right.
I've always had an issue with the band's name, and I don't know how to resolve that. You know where the name comes from?
No, I don't actually.
It's maybe not a massively relevant detail anyway, but just as a footnote, in that interview, Nigel did also suggest that Albanese should listen to an excellent Australian podcast called Known Pleasures.
You've recommended a band to me. I'm going to recommend a podcast to you because you mentioned Joy Division's album Unknown Pleasures. So there's a podcast run by my mate called Known Pleasures in honour of that album.
And I don't know whether he has done, but we do get regular fan mail, as you know, Graham, from Parliament House, Canberra, signed Your Secret Admirer. So, I don't know. I mean, we've got a few theories about it.
If he wants to listen to us, he has to get in soon because I'm sure we're going to be cancelled very soon for our logo and the name of our podcast.
And Albanese did choose I think it was his favourite 10 Australian songs of all time. And he was criticised for the fact that I think there were no women artists featured and no Indigenous artists. So he was attacked from the left in terms of his song choices. And now he's attacked from the right in terms of
his fashion choice.
So it's like, man, he really needs to duck and cover next time anyone asks him about music.
Indeed. I mean, I started thinking about what would happen if he was wearing other T-shirts, because the American band Kiss were criticized because the two S's in their name was the same font as Germany's SS.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Kiss often have to change their font in Germany for that particular reason. Yeah, if he was wearing a Kiss T-shirt, would the same thing have happened? I'm sure not.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, if he was wearing a Led Zeppelin T-shirt, Germany rained bombs on London during the First World War using Zeppelins. I mean, that could have been seen as being a little bit insensitive.
Every second band name or album name was offensive if you were focused enough on the backdrop to it.
Well, this is why at the very beginning I said it was a storm in a T-shirt, and that's exactly what it is.
One of the ironies is that not many of Susan Lee's colleagues in the opposition parties have backed her up. So her deputy said, I'm not going to answer multiple questions about T-shirts. And so she's getting backup from the Murdoch media, but not so much from her own party, who are kind of thinking, well, there are way more important things going on
Indeed.
in Australia, economically, socially, whatever, that the Prime Minister could be criticised for. So now her judgment is being questioned by her colleagues. So the idea that an Australian leader of the opposition might be turfed out of power because of poor judgment regarding a Joy Division T-shirt does appeal to me. It's not likely to be as serious about, but yeah, it's could be another brick in the wall, to quote another, Yes. Pink Floyd, how many Nazi references were there on their album titles? I don't know.
I think it's a non-story. It would have been less controversial if he came down with no shirt on at all.